Well, good afternoon, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to our webinar today. My name is Aidan Brown. I'm delighted to be here today as the webinar host, and it's my great pleasure to welcome everyone here today on behalf of Northern Ireland's 6 further and higher education colleges, the Department for the Economy and the Hospitality and Tourism Skills, HATS Network, to the third of 4 webinars in the Hospitality and Tourism Management Skills Spotlight series. We've had a great response so far, and we thank you very much indeed for joining us today. For those who joined as delegates and haven't been able to join us just at the start, I'll mention this at the end, but the entire replay of today's event will be emailed to everyone along with the ebooks and the slides from the session. So we do hope that you'll enjoy looking at those resources. Well, you'll notice that we have a chat function today, and we're asking you to make this as interactive as possible, because both Siobhan and Mary, our guest presenters today, will be very, very keen to answer your questions, very happy to answer your questions. And all that we're asking is that when you leave a question, if you would just give your name and also the part of the profession that you're in, the sector of the industry that you're in, just so that Mary and Siobhan can tailor that answer specifically really to your needs. Now, we'll also be running 4 polls during today's session. And Sean, who's our technical wizard, will be uploading 3 polls during the first presentation by Siobhan and 1 during Mary's. And the answer, or the kind of results of that poll, if we can put it that way, will be available at the end of the session. I'm sure, like me, you're very much looking forward to hearing those. So firstly, I'm going to take just a moment to guide you through the shape of today's seminar. We've mentioned that the slides will be emailed at the end. You can see the video on the Belfast Met YouTube channel and the Support for Business channel at Belfast Met. And all of the 6 colleges have fed into these webinars, and we thank everyone for joining us today. So I'm going to take a moment just to introduce our panel. Siobhan Mulvenna is a lecturer at Belfast Metropolitan College, and she's also the founder of SMT Solutions, and she's a track record of great achievement in the hospitality sector. You'll hear a little bit more about and from Siobhan in a few moments' time. We're also delighted to be joined today by the Director of Future Spark Coaching, Mary McGrath. And Mary, again, has a track record of achievement working right across the island of Ireland, and we look forward to hearing her thoughts as she shares her skills and recommendations and tips for surviving, growing, building back better at this very, very critical and challenging time. Now, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, the Management Skills Spotlight series has been created to provide you, industry professionals in the hospitality and tourism sector, with, I suppose, a range of resources, a toolkit to develop your businesses and support your staff, as well, critically, as looking after you, because you're under great challenges and impacts every day. This series enables you to build skills, gain knowledge, and share experiences with other managers and industry professionals in hospitality and tourism, drawing on the skills and expertise of our guest speakers, industry representatives, as well as college lecturing staff. Now, you know there are 40 main buildings and 200 out centres from our 6 further and higher education colleges across Northern Ireland. Everyone is willing to help and able to help, and are delighted to be working in partnership with you. Well, as you all know, delegates, there were, well, I suppose pre-pandemic, we can say 60,000 people working in the hospitality sector, and the past year has been the most challenging. I think the feedback which the organisers have had is to say that it's been the most challenging year yet for many, many years for business owners, staff working in the sector, and it's had a huge impact on everyone, both physically and in terms of their mental health. I know so many people have commented, you can't help but be moved when you hear people like Jared, the owner of Dan's Bar on the Springfield Road in Belfast, talking to radio journalists just about the stress that's had on him as someone whose wife works in the business, who's got 6 children, and all he wants is an opportunity to trade and to practice his professional skills again in business. So you know that as managers, you've had to, I suppose, pivot businesses, transform processes and services, be responsive to changing customer needs, and as well support your staff, all while managing the work-life balance, which is no easy feat. The prolonged impact of the pandemic on the hospitality and tourism sector has left many managers feeling overwhelmed and both physically and mentally exhausted. Now, that's what today's session is about, helping you cope with that. Our first speaker today is Siobhan Mulvenna. Siobhan has over 25 years of experience delivering bespoke training solutions to the hospitality and tourism industry, specialising in a wide range of areas, including resilience training, which is absolutely critical to you as you develop and build back. So today's session will focus on providing you with the skills to develop that resilience and build back and support your own mental well-being. Siobhan is a colleague of mine at Belfast Met. She's one of the most upbeat and sunny people that I knew, and she couldn't help smiling yesterday as she finished 5 days of training for PwC on a client simulation. All of the graduates through the Assured Skills program had job interviews, and they were the company PwC was so impressed with the work that Siobhan had done that on the spot they offered every single graduate a job. No mean feat in these troubled times. So with her thoughts on this very special day, will you please welcome Siobhan Mulvenna. Siobhan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aidan. I appreciate that very warm welcome. And I don't think it was just myself that could take credit for those wonderful credits have now been offered to those graduates at PwC. But thank you for that, and welcome everyone. Delighted to be here with you today about building resilience. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about, I believe in, and indeed I make deposits on a daily basis to it. It's been a tough year, without a doubt, and I would echo all of that. And speaking to people throughout the year in all industries, particularly in hospitality, you know, there have been tears. I've had business owners who have just watched a lifetime of hard work tumbling away without any great amount of guidance or not enough guidance. I don't mind saying they have cried, and I've cried with them. So it's been very, very tough. But I think people in hospitality, you know, you're salt of the earth without a doubt, and you do have resilience already within you. So I'm delighted to be able to talk about this topic and hopefully let you go away today with some tools that you can really use with it. And I know Mari will talk a little bit later about resilience in terms of your teams. I'm going to focus on you as managers and leaders in the industry and how you can build your own personal resilience to do it. Now, without a doubt, most people, when they return to work, will need that period of readjustment. And we're just around the corner for those of you that are working in the sector where you're able to invite people for outside dining and drinking. But there will take that period of settling into the new normal. And people need time to readjust to the workplace environment, to being around colleagues once again. For many would have been in furlough. There could be anxiety over public transport, the new health and safety routines and hygiene routines that we're going to have to put in place, dealing with customers that will have their own levels of anxieties. Many of you will have experienced challenging home environments, as will your teams, juggling maybe caring responsibilities with your work. Some of you may have been ill and had COVID, or had family members that had that, or suffered deep losses as well. So as you and your teams return to work post-COVID, that health and mental well-being needs to be at the core. And the last year has given you and your teams time to revive. Again, as I said, many have been in furlough, and I don't know about you, but when I worked in hospitality, you only ever get a weekend off whenever there was a wedding or a funeral, you know, whereas you've had a team of people that have been used to having the weekends off, and that will be challenged to kind of reintroduce the work and life back in again for them. And there's no doubt with coronavirus that there's been that, the pandemic and the lockdown has had such a human impact on how we and our teams are feeling. You know, in hospitality and tourism, your workers become your family, your work family. Furlough and uncertainty, as well as job insecurity, put pressure on employees in ways that not only tested their well-being and private lives, but also how they think, behave, speak with each other, and for you too. And the executive rules, I suppose, have hindered some trade and planning there as well. So we're going to talk about a little bit about stress management, how you can manage that stress, then building resilience and the difference between why they're important, and then giving you some specific tools that you'll be able to take with today and work with today. And then Mari will look very much at that team resilience. So we know it's been tough, and some of the statistics that were taken in January of this year would be people are feeling more stressed, more anxious, and more depressed than usual. That's probably not surprising to any of us here that are on this particular platform. And some of the reasons, I'd be interested to know in the chat if you can relate to the, maybe there's other reasons that you or your teams have spoke about. But 46% of people have said that they're concerned about when things get back to normal. Um, 37% feel anxious about changing rules around lockdown. 34% feared the future post-COVID. 30% had money worries, and 57% have missed family and friends. And I can very much relate to that as well. But the good news is that stress within the hospitality and tourism, it's something that you're already got in buckets fulls. You know, you've been used to working potentially in double shifts or triple shifts, and maybe dealing with situations where buses don't turn up, or double booked or treble booked, or no running water, stuff like that there. You know, for you, you're continually doing things like you care a lot, you work, and you know, it's always about willing to help other people. You deal with guest complaints, you show up early, you work late, you work when your friends and family are probably off at the weekends, and you apologize even whenever maybe you're not wrong. So there's a great level already there of resilience within your sector, which I think is great. You're not starting just from that very, very first base. You've already got a really good base. So what's the difference, I suppose, between the two? And it's important to frame that. When we talk about stress management, that's almost like, you know, that it's about managing your day-to-day stresses of life, about becoming more open to building resilience, so we can withstand life crises. So stress management, if I would say, and you heard me saying at the beginning how I make deposits daily, your stress management is a bit like your bank account. So that's managing those day-to-day interactions, ensuring there's enough funds, and staying afloat. Whereas resiliency building, that's like your savings account or your investment portfolio if you have one. It's where we put aside that reserve fund for some time to come. It takes planning, discipline, decision-making skills. It speaks of responsibility and accountability. Resiliency building gives us the assurance that we're not just taking care of ourselves now, but that we're putting in place some measures to keep us in the future. You know, there's many of us that are concerned about losing a few pounds or getting motivated to look good and take actions towards that. But those who want to be resilient will invest in healthy relationships. They'll find those life planning strategies and set healthy boundaries. And they understand the merits of living in alignment with their values. They're not just content with the now, they plan for that future happiness, and they invest in the future well-being. They'll also create structures and work with professionals to help them put in place those structures to sustain their happiness. So you can see where it's important to look at that, building resilience, as well as finding techniques to manage the stress as well to do that. So all stress isn't bad stress, you know, we have to remember that there. Some stress is good stress, but stress in itself is a natural process. And it's the pressure where we're not able to cope with whatever's coming to us. Our coping mechanisms or our coping capability is not as great as whatever the stress that we're put under. So the good stress is whenever we're really busy. And if you're like me, when I was in the industry, you know, sometimes you were just in that flow. You were really in the flow where you were buzzing and everything was going well, and it was a busy house, and you were just running at 10 miles an hour, and everybody was in sync. And there's a bit of stress there, but that's good. That kind of gets the adrenaline pumping. But if it gets too much, that's where we start to get into that distress situation. And it could be where you might find, is it a physical thing that I noticed the first time I'm getting stress? Is it emotional? Or is it mental? Because you need to be able to identify what they are, you know, within yourself. You need to be able to think, well, when I'm getting stressed, what way do I behave? And it's important, and I would get you to ask yourself, you know, think about the last time, without putting yourself in a bad place, but think about the last time stressful situation. What was the first thing that you noticed about yourself? Was it a physical thing? Did you find that it was palpitations potentially that were happening? Were you feeling a little bit your muscle tension, or maybe headaches? Or did you find that in terms of your emotional, you were getting frustrated or irritable? Maybe it was your cognitive, where you were getting confused, or memory issues, or maybe it was behavioral, or social, or avoiding other people, or your reduced ability to support other people. But it's really important to identify for yourself which one of those it is for you, first of all. For me, it's a physical one. I get a red bloodshot eye. It took me a lot of years to realize that that's what it was. But, you know, I cope well with stress. As I said, I feed my resilience on a daily basis. So I don't look as if I'm stressed. I don't sound as if I'm stressed, but I get this red bloodshot eye. And when I get, that's my body's way of saying, Siobhan, you're not as cool as you think you are. It's time to just get into those reserves and pull something out to get you back again. So we need to know when to stop and then take actions where that's concerned. And you need to be able to find ways to do that, because you work in a stressful industry anywhere that can be stressful at times, though it's an amazing industry, but it can be stressful at times when we're dealing with the public and all the emotions that brings. But for you, you need to build your personal resilience up there. So we're going to look at some tips, first of all, and how you can overcome that stress. So I want you to play with me. I want you to do these techniques. So I'm hoping that by the end of today at 4 o'clock, you're going away feeling a little bit more Zen-like. And these are real tools, real tricks that you can do every day. So the first one is breathing. And this is something Aidan delivers a lot on as well, and the importance of breathing. And the challenge with our body whenever we're getting a little bit stressed is that our mind is ahead of our body, or our body's ahead of our mind. You know, we're in one place, but we're thinking of something else. So our physical and mental are kind of in friction, and that creates friction. So what we need to do is we need to bring them into alignment. And we can do that really well by breath, focusing on your breath and speaking out loud. So you breathe in through your nose and we count to 4. You hold for 4, and then you breathe out through your mouth with 4. Okay, and you can do this at your own pace, at your own, whenever you're getting into it the way yourself. And it's breathing in through the nose, your nose. That's a cross between my mouth and my nose. You breathe in through your nose as if you're almost smelling a rose, and you breathe out through your mouth as if you're blowing a feather. Okay, so I want you to kind of relax, just roll those shoulders a little bit. If your tongue is stuck to the top of your mouth, let it drop, and just relax a little. Okay, so I'm going to count to 4, and if you breathe in through your nose, and then we're going to hold to 4 and breathe out through your mouth. Okay, so hopefully you're all with me. So breathing in through your nose, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, and out through your mouth, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll try that again. In through your nose, big deep breath. 1, 2, 3. Hold. And out through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. What can make that more impactful is if you put your hand on your heart whenever you're doing it. So you're actually feeling your breathing, you're feeling your chest raising. And if you're just feeling a little bit of stress or tension, that's a really good technique that you can do, and very, very helpful to be able to do that. So hopefully some of you tried that. I would love to hear in the comments that, did you feel a little bit of the blood pressure going down? It's a technique that's often used. I don't know about you, if you have that white coat syndrome, and the doctors and people do that when they're sitting waiting to get the blood pressure done, and it's been medically proved that it reduces blood pressure. So let me know how you get on with that one. The second one is visualization. Okay, so this is where we want to imagine ourselves walking with confidence wherever we are. And you imagine, some of you who are going to be opening up on Friday are probably maybe a little bit anxious about that there, and maybe you're worrying about it and you're stressing. But visualization is about it's like a mental rehearsal that we don't want to stress before it, we want to prepare before it. And often we just stress, we don't prepare in our mind, I'm talking about. because we know we're really good at getting the show on the road. So mentally, it's about imagining how well that's going to go. You know, we're not imagining the panic or chaos. We're imagining how well it's going to go. So that mental rehearsal about how you want that event to actually go, that will really, really help. Lewis Hamilton, David Beckham, Conor McGregor, well documented for doing that there. So that's really good for the mind, for that visualization. And the third little aspect is for being with sound. So we're bringing our consciousness alive. We know from all our senses, the last one to go in our final days is our sound. So sound has been able to wake us up and bring that best energy. So we just stay silent. So wherever you are tuning in from right now, I want you just to be silent for a moment and listen to the sounds that are around you. And when you're doing that, it almost brings a sense of calmness. I don't know if it did for you. Again, I would love to hear in the chat that if it did. But just listen. So what do you hear? Depends where you are, but truly tuning in to the sounds that are around you. So those are three little tools that you can take away and do very, very easily. So to looking at resilience. So resilience is about being able to bounce back and our ability to be able to do that. It's not a trait that people either have or don't have. It involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and developed over time. So it's a learned behavior, which is really, really good. And some of the aspects that's determined within a model of resilience is your ability to cope. So that's about tapping into those inner the skills and strengths to cope and recover from problems, setbacks and challenges, and to bounce back. Your grit, you know, your true grit we talk about, never giving up, finding yourselves the strength to tackle any problems ahead, to overcome adversity and move on with your life. Emotional intelligence, massive one, and one I believe that our hospitality and tourism sector have in bucketfuls. Being able to analyze and manage the feelings and emotions is a key successful factor to deal with situations more positively. And when we're really good at generally at reading people, making sense of things. So making some sense from past experiences and learning from them, and to make life meaningful and having that sense of purpose and goals for the future, which are really, really important. At an organisation level, I appreciate some of your managers and potentially owners. So it's recognised as a really, really important aspect as well at an organisational level. And it has to include not just the individuals, but also the process and cultures. I tuned in last week to last week's webinar, and Helen from the Titanic, she shared some of the strategies that they're using from an organizational perspective. She talked about ensuring staff are comfortable with COVID conditions and managing the customer's expectations, empowering and supporting staff, letting their voice be heard, listening to them, adapt if you can, and if you can't, make sure that you explain why you can't. So that was really, really, really good advice that Helen had given. So for you then, for personal resilience, these are some ways, just some ways that you can build your personal resilience. Obviously, there's lots of healthy other ways that we can do it, like swimming in the sea, the cold, sweet sea swimming is a big topical thing at the moment. Obviously, exercise and eating healthily. But some of these other aspects look a little bit deeper. You know, how can you manage change, taking care of yourself in that healthy way, moving forward towards goals, making connections. Again, looking at some of these a little bit that's nurturing your self-esteem. So nurturing the self-esteem, our self-esteem, people talk about self-confidence, self-esteem. Self-esteem is what we see in the mirror. Self-confidence is what we give outwardly. And again, within our industry, we're quite good at the old aspect of self-confidence because we're on show and we put the show on. But nurturing your self-esteem. So when you're talking to yourself inside your head, what do you say? Are you kind to yourself? If not, be kinder, because you're listening. Princess Diana famously said that if I spoke to my friends the way I spoke to myself, I wouldn't have any. So that nurturing your own self-esteem is really important. You are enough. Keeping perspective, if I look back in this in 20 years' time, what will I think, say, or do? Putting it in perspective. I work with a colleague and in one of the projects I work on, and when things are getting a little bit hairy, she'll often say, Siobhan, we're not doing open heart surgery. So that helps us, right? Okay, yes, you're absolutely right, we're not. So that keeps it in perspective. And the third one, practicing gratitude. So there's lots of science in and around this that our brain can't be negative and positive at the same time. So on a daily basis, this is something that I would do. I would say 3 things I'm grateful for at the start of the day and 3 things I'm grateful for at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be War and Peace. It could be there's food in my cupboard. It could be that I got a certain piece of work completed, whatever it is. But being grateful and actually practicing that, making that part of your routine. And all of these things are very important that you do in a continuous, you're disciplined about it. If you want to have a really fit body, you don't go to the gym once. You don't eat a healthy meal once. You have to do it on a continuous basis. To build our resilience inside, our mental resilience in our head, it's the very same way. We need to practice this and do this on a daily basis. Our professional resilience looks at aspects, and Mari's going to take you through these in much more detail, but that accepting change and taking charge, reflecting and finding your sense of purpose. But I'm going to leave that for Mara, who will take you through that very, very shortly, and how you can really have that professional resilience for yourself and for your teams as well, which is important. So we need to help people to be able to adapt and become more resilient, and you can do that by making sure that you have a program of events that's going to promote that health and well-being. Cooperate with the people you're working with, encourage and support those positive working relationships for your managers and for you with your teams and with each other. Foster that culture of respect and consideration and kindness at work, and helping others to adapt and become more resilient in the face of that uncertainty, which is really, really important. This is an opportunity for you as leaders of the hospitality and tourism industry, and we're on a cusp here, and you can seize this moment. There's no doubt that in these times of uncertainty that the emotional intelligence, compassion, helping other staff to adapt and change their emotions is going to be really important, plus doing it for yourself. This new return phase does give you the opportunity to rethink that employee experience in ways that respect individual differences, their home lives, skills, capabilities, mindsets, personal characteristics, and other factors, while also really adapting to rapidly changing circumstances. You have that within your gift to do it. But most important, for you, people will be dependent on you as managers and leaders. We're going into a stage of, we talk about the knowns, the unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. So the knowns are, for example, we're opening up on Friday for outside dining and drinking. The unknowns are, will there be another lockdown? The unknown unknowns, well, we don't know. So you need to keep making deposits into your resilience so that you are tougher to be able to cope with what's ahead for you. And there's some tools there, simple tools that I've given, and I would love to hear from you if you in the chat, if you think some of those would work for you, or maybe you have other ones that I haven't mentioned that you build your own resilience. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck with the reopening for those of you that are involved. And I think hopefully it'll not be as bad as you think. I was speaking to some people in retail, friends who are in retail, who were a little bit anxious, particularly in the beauty field, about opening up because they've been in furlough for so long. But they just said after a couple of days, it was like getting on your bike again. They were, and they said how they were a bit worried about it, but it absolutely works out well. And as Maya Angelou says, every storm runs out of rain. So thank you for listening, and I wish you every success in building that resilience. Thank you, Aidan.
Thank you very much indeed, Siobhan. I have known and respected and admired Siobhan Mulvenna for a number of years. I never ever thought that I would hear her re-quote Donald Rumsfeld in a presentation about hospitality, but there you go, Siobhan. You know, every day is a school day. Thank you so much for that presentation. You have such passion in what you say, and I just thought that was a lovely strapline that you used. Tough years Tears and Tools for Rebuilding. It sounds like a title of a book, and it would be a very good one if you wrote it. You talked a lot about resilience in the sector and how on a daily basis people have to deal with, advisory comments or complaints, whatever you want to call them. And I can think of a fabulous former student we have, Mara Caherty, who worked as a cruise director, and she liked traveling the world doing all of that, but she did make a comment once about having demanding customers from across the world. I loved your point, Siobhan, about investing in relationships with your staff. And you get that back, as you know, everyone on the call knows, you get that back 10 times if you show a kindness to someone. I remember watching the late Paul Dinsmore in the kitchen at Antique Aroma years and years ago at a charity event, and he was like a conductor at an orchestra, and everyone working in the kitchen looked to Paul, and he could see what was going on and manage all of that. My mind just couldn't comprehend it as well. And Siobhan, you reminded me of a function I was comparing in the Penthouse in the Europa a few years ago. It was the 60 years of UTV dinner, and there was a new, relatively new manager on who was managing the function who did really, really well. And I heard the incomparable James McGinn whisper to this person, "Remember, walk like a manager." And I thought that was a really brilliant line that you could give, that you can kind of cope with anything in that. Siobhan, thanks so much, and we look forward to hearing your comments and responses to the questions which are coming through on the chat. And remember, there'll be an opportunity to see the poll results as well. Well,
thank you.
Staying with a track record of achievement, it's a great pleasure to welcome now the Director of Future Spark Coaching. Now, as I mentioned earlier on today, Mary McGrath is a life and leadership coach. She's an expert facilitator and a wonderful speaker, as we're about to hear. Now, she's an accredited and specialist resilience at work coach, practitioner working with individuals, team leaders and teams on assessing and building resilience. My goodness, isn't that the most topical theme for today? Now, our speaker's other key areas of skills and experience include team coaching, group facilitation, motivational speaking, and holding public speaking workshops. Now, what happened before this? Well, Mary worked in the non-profit sector for just under 20 years, and she's held community and voluntary sector senior leadership and CEO posts, leading teams and projects right across a variety of fields, including mental health. How important is that? Community development, the third age sector, employability, and economic regeneration, which is absolutely critical. And she's done that and achieved in that sector, both in the Republic of Ireland and here in Northern Ireland. With her thoughts on this very special day, I'm delighted to introduce the Director for Future Spark Coaching, Mary McGrath. Mary.
Well, thank you, Aidan, and thank you, Siobhan. And Siobhan has given me a wonderful springboard to now take you to a different place, which is we're going to shift gear. And I hope you've gained, always great listening to Siobhan, gained some personal tips there on resilience. Our gear shift now will be looking at team resilience. And I remember there was a couple of years ago, someone said to me, shared with me this quote, which has always stuck in my mind. But the first time I heard it, I kind of, did that quizzical look. What exactly do you mean by that? And the phrase they used was that you can have on a team a group where people are individually, showing and doing great self-care and stress management for themselves, using many of the tips Siobhan has said, but actually, just because you have a group of resilient people does not make a resilient team. And I don't know about you, I kind of sat there and mulled over that. But today, I want to reinforce that for you all, that absolutely that is correct. Because echoing many of the fantastic points which Siobhan very eloquently laid out in terms of individual and organizational resilience, team resilience, as you will know, as all of you have, everybody has worked on teams, many of you be leading teams and organizations on your own business and will have key ideas on effective teamwork. But in terms of resilience, what I want to bring to you today, and it doesn't matter if you have a small team, a family business of one or two, or are managing and working in a much larger corporate domain, there are nuances and things. We're going to do a quick run through, 7 key areas. And what I really want you to do, no matter what team leadership role you're in or organizational role, is to walk away with a really, really holistic understanding of all the different factors that make a team. And I would echo what Siobhan says, as I always do, talking to anybody about their resilience, is that you are no doubt doing, and given the industry you're in, and given how well you serve us, that you are no doubt replicating a lot of brilliant practices and have strengths and resilience in your team already. My purpose, which I hope today that from seeing this really holistic picture, and I want to give you a really thorough understanding with some tools on resilience, particularly through a team lens, that you maybe walk away thinking, actually, there are one or two things I think, I might not have paid as much attention to in the team, but you know what? Maybe with a few slight tweaks and adjustments and small steps, that will help build our overall resilience. So just thinking of, because I know it is a big day ahead, as Siobhan has said, with the weekend where many of you will be reopening. And for you and your teams, it is a great time of excitement. So today, in looking at all the different aspects of resilience, I always find it, the human mind remembers things really well in threes, called the power of three. So whenever you're thinking of resilience, even in the most broadest sense for your team, the three key strands are there, and the 7 factors I'll talk about cover all of these. So you're thinking on all those aspects that Siobhan had said, and I noted even from the poll that mastering stress and especially workloads has come up as a really, really strong theme for you. The second strand we'll be looking at and what factors play is adapting to change, and that is our ability to flex. And I will tell you very quickly as a team coach, teams I have seen struggle over the last year during COVID are teams who have tried to keep the same practices pre-COVID and haven't let anything go. Because resilience, as we'll talk about, and particularly in types of the team, sometimes resilience can be seen and misunderstood as, that ability to keep going, to be able to take more and more, to be able to, pour, and actually all you're doing is creating more strategies to absorb more. It is not. And we'll talk later about the whole idea of confident vulnerability, that actually sometimes you just got to say no and drop things, and to have those team discussions actually, and especially in COVID, where we're on shifting sands all the time, particularly pertinent. And then the final, as Siobhan said, and it links back to that idea, of putting things in your own resilience bank account, but actually for the team, how you are, how the team is looking ahead. What are you anticipating? And that whole arena of optimism. And actually also planning and having that, as we, no doubt many of you had contingency plans extraordinaire over the past year, but plan A, B, C, and D. So just bringing on to this for me is a great sum up of team resilience. And you can see, again, working to the power of three core elements. And I'm just going to let that rest a little moment with you and to look. And a couple of things I will just pick up on really, really quickly, which are key to looking at individual and team resilience. Sometimes resilience is seen as mastering a big challenge or a big change, when actual fact, and do you know what? We all know it. Those bad days at work on a team where it's not one big thing happens, but your drive to work is awful. You get in, something happens, your first call you take is awful, then something else goes wrong, your computer goes down. These tiny little series of incremental things, which small on their own are nothing, but you see when you put them all together and stretch that out over an ongoing basis, it really does build up to have a negative impact. Those everyday pressures when they're let, loose as such and unchecked. And Siobhan has mentioned a few things just in terms of our own. We did breathing earlier, just in terms of the key thing of the team is actually physically and mentally coping with pressures. What is in place for the team? What are they doing to stay healthy amongst themselves? And actually how you are looking ahead. So thinking of today, as is mentioned, another key thing, and because there's a lot of misinformation I feel about resilience, because it has become one of those buzzwords when actually it is quite nuanced. And one thing I would say, it is personal and it is very specific to each and every one of us as individuals, and also unique. All of our teams are unique. But the one thing I would always stress, because whenever people come to me coaching, or whether it's their own individual resilience, how they're leading teams to be resilient, people are very, very hard on themselves. And I will often hear the phrase in coaching, I'm not very resilient. Resilience, keywords here, state, not trait. And if you imagine, if you are ascertaining, how resilient your team is or how resilient you feel leading your team or organization, you're only doing imagine a camera that click, a snapshot in time, because everything is constantly changing around us. So just to remember that, because what you may have coped with really well a month ago, a similar situation arises a month later. Actually, many circumstances may have changed. So your ability to cope with that maybe a month ago has dropped or just shifted, but not to beat yourself up or for teams to feel that they're not coping well, because it is a fluid and moving feast. And this is just a quick snapshot of the 7. You'll see there in self-care, some of these areas I am not going to go into because Siobhan has covered so masterfully earlier, but we'll be covering on, things like key team elements, the robust team, the bread and butter, I have to say, the sense of shared purpose. Now, some of these things may sound very straightforward and common sense in regards to teams, but as we know, and I've led many, many teams, many different types of organizations, regionally, remotely as well, an idea, does a team have a really shared collective idea of what it's about? Not necessarily, and it may sound odd, but that can be the case. So looking at teams that are robust, you're looking at the core things like shared goals, shared achievements, how they are proactive when issues arise. One of the big things I noticed in linking back to the poll today for all of you is a key area in terms of resourceful, how are people managing to do less with more? And just in terms of then how you look collectively as a team. Perseverance, grit, Siobhan had mentioned, but the perseverance is all of us as individuals and teams have constantly had to navigate over this past year situations we had never dreamt of. And this is where we come in to look at perseverance. And then 2 closely connected areas we'll be looking at. And you see this latter half on the left-hand side of just our circle. These are some of the more unseen changes. The unseen below the surface, the human factors, the atmosphere and people work, in terms of what supports and networks are there within the team? How does feedback happen? In terms of capability, connection, what are relationships like, on a very human, personal level? And then lastly, in terms of alignment, actually, what is the atmosphere? How are the team appreciated, valued, congratulated, validated? These are all core things which altogether mold to give us that really holistic overview on resilience. So just before, I'd be really, really keen if you could in the chat, I would love to know, I know there have been polls run already, just a few words if you want to put in the chat. When you're thinking of team resilience and looking ahead, what is top of your list, which was, that you would really be anxious or worried about, or that you're keen to develop for your team? Please put in the chat, I'd love to hear. And I'll just come back to that in a moment. So to give us a chance to type. So looking at, quickly, and we're going to do a quick run through, and I'm going to intersperse this with tools and some of the tips. Also as well from today, there is an ebook which delves into these areas from a team leader perspective and a team resilience perspective, which will hopefully give you really good food for thought and practical questions to ask yourself about team resilience moving forward from today. So as I said, the most basic in terms of our team is a team why and how, in terms of the shared goals, is genuinely everybody very clear on what the purpose is. One example which always sticks in my mind is that famous anecdote, and it's a story about NASA. And there was an organizational consultant goes into NASA, American Space Agency, and was interviewing all the team and doing team development work. And one of the questions they asked was a person who would head up cleaning of the facilities and facilities management, what is the purpose of your job? And this response, very famous response, he answered, to put the purpose of my job is, heading up janitorial services to put people on the moon. And that for me just demonstrates that, yes, everybody will know their own job bit, but actually and we're thinking team resilience, where do you have those conversations? And especially when things are changing during COVID as to what is the most important thing for our team now, this month. And actually with COVID, I think teams have had to revisit that almost constantly, on a much more regular basis. Where are shared values? Are we all clear on what we're about? Are we all excited? Where does my job fit in with the bigger picture of the team and the bigger picture of what we're achieving in organization? Because do you know what? None of us, the vast majority of us, don't want to go in and spend long shifts in our working day, not having a sense of, a feeling of meaning, that we matter, and that what we do actually fits in to help with a much bigger picture. I think the other aspect then, in looking in terms of, a final one, and again, it's come up interestingly during COVID, how teams relate, and even virtually, the conversation they're having. Part of resilience if there are things which have built up, and sometimes with our virtual world and teams, it's been quite difficult to keep that connection. So tiny issues can fester and maybe snowball, but thinking about your team and purpose and those shared goals, what honest conversations can you have? You know, if there are anything which are becoming elephants in the room, how do you go about and resolve issues together? Because this is one of the things, you know, when you work in a good team where you feel a sense of openness and trust, and dealing how conflict is dealt with is obviously a key aspect. Looking in terms of, this is where it comes with the, I hate to say it, the less is more, but I would again emphasize the importance of dropping things rather than expecting people to be this ever-stretching elastic band. We are not, and you know you are not. And looking at the polls, this was a key area for everyone. And I think sitting down again, when's the last, you know, have a think about it. When is the last time, you know, as a team, you actively looked to see what you could drop, what the team didn't find, linking back to purpose was useful in what you're to deliver now as you can. And, you know, making some decisions and not carrying it all through. I think the other aspect as well is sometimes when people's resilience maybe falls within a team is when they know they have gifts and talents and they could use it to help outside their job role, or opportunities to step up and help out, but maybe they're overlooked or not asked to contribute. And actually the team knowing themselves what other skills and resources they have from previous jobs, their own knowledge, their own passions, which can contribute. And then I think a key thing is, and it can be an issue which can rankle in teams as well, and especially under stress, is what mechanisms do you have in place? Yes, a team, you know, all of us know the structures in terms of line management, but actually, how do the team as a collective, you know, how do you hold each other accountable? You know, one of the worst, and I think is very demotivating and does impact on resilience, if you have team members giving it their all, and maybe due to poor accountability or, you know, a focus on performance, there may be somebody just kind of pond skating on the team, getting by and doing the minimal. And that can be very difficult, and it can ripple out and impact, you know, just on your team resilience. So all of those things of thinking of big picture resourceful, because I have to say, you know, when I'm thinking of everything reopening, you know, linked back to that NASA quote, you know, I personally, and like many other people, don't just see your doors reopening, you know, for the hospitality tourism sector holds the key. You're just not opening doors. It's a bigger community purpose. We are at a moment in history here during COVID, and all of you are helping through your business and the services and what you do of helping us to open our hearts again, open hopes for a better day, you know, with this weekend coming, and also opening the happiness of human connection. So thinking of bigger fulfilling purposes, you know, that's where I see in terms of the weekend and moving ahead, you know, for your good selves working and leading in the sector. Looking at tools, I have to say there's one thing I will give you, which is a great little checklist of questions, and that is in terms of to help you with adversity. I remember last year, I'm a small business owner myself, 5 years in business. I sat down and asked, I just replaced the we with I here, questions whenever COVID hit, because it had a huge impact on my client base and business. So these are brilliant questions, even just to sit down with a team and discuss, you know, very practical and rich discussions can come from that as some of the tools. Perseverance we talked about, and I'm not going to spend much time on hospitality, creative energy, because in the words Siobhan used earlier, you are adept and masterful at putting on that performance, bringing us the atmosphere and bringing the energy. But one thing I would like to say is just on the latter couple of points, and a really good indicator of this is just actually listening, that when you encounter problems in the team, when there's an issue, listen to the language that people are using, because two key things in resilience are that adaptability is how you respond to issues, the curveballs, but also as well how you manage the negativity of others. And because you know yourself, there can be situations where negativity in a team can be like a contagion. And there can be members of our teams, and I'm sure we have worked with colleagues previously, you know, like where you step into a room and have a quick cup of tea, and within 2 minutes, you feel the atmosphere and the energy in the room is sucked dry because they are not one of life's radiators, but maybe more in terms of their outlook and their own negativity, you know, managing the drain. So there are tips as well in the ebook, I said, of looking at that. But listen, you are masterful at doing this with your customers and customer base already. But just thinking in terms of how you reframe setbacks And a lovely example of the ability to reframe is one which I always sticks in my mind and I use for resilience, and it is from the hospitality sector. And a very famous local example is how to, taking that scenario of getting the most excruciating TripAdvisor review you've ever had, all the different reactions you can have to that. But reframing is all about, is there any other way to look at it? What other angles can I take? What other ways might there be, around this problem? And having those solution-focused conversations with your team. And this, for me, is just a classic example. The next picture, in terms of how someone can flip it around. And I'm sure you recognize it because it's one post that went viral from a local cafe that the chef had written up on their chalkboard after receiving one of the worst TripAdvisor reviews they ever had. A beautiful example of all the different reactions you had, how that was managed and reframed. So I put here in the slides, I'm not going to go through this, but these are some questions, which if you feel that negative contagion going within the team, here are some questions you can pose, flip discussion, shift it in a different direction, for you to help you reframe in terms of setbacks. I'm not going to spend any time on the culture of self-care, but Siobhan, because Siobhan has covered that quite capably. But one of the things I would say, and especially just thinking of, this reopening and teams kind of coming together, getting everything ready, and the amount of work that you evidently will put behind the scenes on that, thinking of recovery time for the team after busy periods and looking ahead. I noticed linked to the poll, having discussions and planning as a team, for those frenetic mad periods, and how you're collectively, and this should not all be down to the team leader, how collectively you support each other on that. So the other aspect, looking in terms of feedback, one of the things I would say I experience a lot in coaching is just in terms of bad feedback, and how people communicate within their team setting can be some of the most damaging things on resilience. And I think, Winston Churchill had a great quote in, the art of diplomacy is how to tell somebody nicely to go to hell in such a way they enjoy it. Feedback is not a million miles away. Being able to deliver good, constructive, helpful feedback where someone feels safe, absolutely key to building your team capability and capacity. And also thinking about what other networks do your team have to support them, as they move forward and navigating all these difficult times and periods. What other access? You can't carry it all alone as team leaders. Belfast Metropolitan College today is a great example of additional support within your hospitality sector and tourism sectors. What else are out there? And connecting with other organizations that can support the team. And again, these are just some solution-focused questions to have and use with the team, and thinking of creative ways forward. And then I think really the final, just these last two parts are, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time in these at all. It is the atmosphere you create in a team. You and I know we've all worked in teams where if I asked you to think of brilliant examples of teamwork, they're connected to atmosphere, how you create a sense of belonging. Do people in the team know what you do? Do they know a little bit about your personal life? How do the team go about and help each other? Or is it a team environment, which is really one of the most toxic for resilience, where there is such a thing as a stupid question and where people feel unsafe or unsure about asking questions or flagging issues? And then just finally, one of the biggest things, I won't spend time in conflict resolution, celebrate. You host as an industry, celebrating our key moments of life, but how do you do that within your team? What is the sense of fun and enjoyment and achievement, when you hit your goals? So just looking at steps to build team resilience, I think one of the, just a basic framework to start, identify first of all what you do already with the team and what everybody finds useful and brilliant and what they appreciate. Look at the other areas. And even if you're only looking at focusing on doing 3 to 5 areas really well, you've already got a solid base. And this today hopefully will just maybe prompt thinking in terms of what areas could you invest in. And just being mindful of the time, Aidan, that is me. I'm going to finish now and hand back to your good self.
Thank you so much. I think if we, that was a brilliant presentation, but I think if we forget everything that's happened to us in the last 24 hours, we'll not forget that slide, Mary. Come in and try the salad that one woman said was the worst she'd ever had in her life. What a lovely way to contextualize something, because it's what one person thought. I love that line, resilient state, not trait. And you talked about honest conversations, and that's absolutely critical, isn't it, in any aspect of business. And Mary, you also talked about the work which is done in colleges, the 6 colleges right across Northern Ireland. I had the great privilege of acting as a compere at staff conference at Southern Regional College, and the principal, Brian Doran, up there started by giving the state of the nation, what we're doing, offering thoughts to the staff who were unwell, and the entire afternoon of the staff conference was spent on staff well-being. So there's everything from jiving to mindfulness to outdoor rugby to all sorts of things. And that just reminded me when you were talking there about celebrating gains and so forth. And today's about facilitating conversation. And thank you so much, Mary, for your splendid input today. I noted with great amusement there that we were already, Siobhan and Amanda were already talking in the chat function. A couple of great questions that I want to put, and I'd maybe come to Siobhan first, and then I'd like to come back, Mary, to you, because Margaret McCabe asks about team members of different levels of resilience. And it's difficult for a manager to balance this. And here, I think Margaret has an absolutely cracking question. I'll ask it to you, Siobhan, and then Mary, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. What would you recommend as one thing that a manager should do every day to build resilience? Siobhan, would you have a thought about that? Because I thought that was a great question, Margaret.
Yeah, and it is for Margaret, and there's probably 2 questions in there, because the one I want to answer is, what should Margaret do for herself to build her resilience? Because that's really important for the managers. It could be meditating. For me, I love the gratitude. I love the gratitude journal. So even if you put that in for work context, and it's a simple little thing, Margaret, you can do it. What's 3 things that no matter how tough the day is, you will find 3 things that you can be grateful for in that day in work. And even if it's a tough member of staff that's maybe taught you a lesson in some sort of way, but gratitude is the one thing that I would recommend to do every single day, because your brain cannot do both. It can't think positive and negative at the same time. So if you're given gratitude, it's amazing how that could come back to you in abundance. And it's a very simple thing, but it has to be done daily.
It has to be done daily. 3 things. Kind of reflecting on the day and looking after yourself and investing in yourself. Mary, you've written about this and you presented about this quite a lot. If you could distill, that all of those years' experience as a CEO, as an award-winning public speaker, as a coach, if you could distill that down for Margaret to one thing that everyone should do every day for them, could you do that one thing? Because it's quite a challenge, Mary, isn't it, to come up with that one.
Mary, I think you're on mute.
Absolutely.
The old saying of 2020.
Oh, the most famous phrase of 2020, Siobhan, you are right. Margaret, one thing I would say, because do you remember that thing, snapshot in time? Every single member of the team will always be at a different point of where they are in resilience. My one answer to that is actually, on that domain I talked about of how you look out for each other, in terms of how connected you are as a team. Have those conversations as a team, and they're very honest conversations to have. Like, how will we keep check and look out for each other? And how will we tell each other? And I'm just thinking, Margaret, one thing springs to mind. I remember many, many years ago doing the classic mistake of someone who's bereaved, coming back after my father died, and I came back to work too soon. I had no self-awareness how raw I was, and that was manifesting itself to me being uncharacteristically short in meetings and impatient. And you know what? It was my colleague Tom, because we had a great team where we could have those conversations. And he remember him tapping me on the shoulder after one meeting. He goes, "Mary, come for a coffee with me." He goes, "Mary, you need to take time off. And I'm going to tell you why, because I'm just concerned about you." Best piece of advice and most thankful I ever got from a team member. But setting those and having those conversations with the team, Margaret, because actually I think the team are very grateful to have that space to chat about this.
Brilliant, and a superb example. And thank you so much for being so generous in sharing that with us, Mary. Coming back to Mary in just a moment, Siobhan, I want to come back to you with our final question before we show the video. And that is about, and it leads so beautifully from what Mary has just said, because Emma Gowdy says, what do you do as a leader, as a manager, when you notice a member of staff stressing, starting to burn out, but they don't see it themselves? Siobhan, what would you say? And then Mary will come to you.
I think it's just, Mari's almost answered that question in what Tom did with her, where you're having that personal and honest, Ian and I, we talk all the time about those brave, courageous, honest conversations. And it's something, Amanda Hamill had said how in the poll, one of the things that they're doing all of the elements. So they're having one-to-one training with staff, and they're doing giving more support. And one of the training courses that I'm delivering a lot in hospitality at the minute is how do you give that feedback? And one of the things I'd say to Emma is using the word I rather than you is very powerful. So it's not like you're burnt out, you're always late, you're being a bit irritable at work. It's like, I'm really concerned about you. I am worried. Here's what I have noticed. How can I help you to help them? Because Emma's absolutely right. Change won't come about until we have a self-awareness ourselves. So you can help to shine that light on it in a gentle, kind way to do that.
And gentle and kind. I mean, Tom didn't tap you on the shoulder and say, like Adrian Dunbar in Sunday night TV drama, listen, fella, he said, come for coffee. Which is a lovely warm thing to do. So you've been there. So put yourself in the leader role, and you notice that. Would you do what Tom did? Would you recommend that?
Absolutely. I would say one thing, Emma. I mean, there are some people who are not good at asking for help. I would be one of them. Lone parent, independent, being like that all my life. But I have learned the hard way. And I think exactly as Siobhan had said, I think another way to link it, and this links it into organizational resilience, all of you will be working to organizational values. And in those values, I would be very surprised if there is nothing, either your organizational or team values, if there is nothing there which isn't about caring for people, giving what you do. So in addition to what Siobhan said, I remember seeing it done really well, like part of our values that we want to live by, as we say, and this is where values become real for people and they remember them, is part of our value is care, say if it's care for each other or openness. Actually taking some of the organizational values and weaving them into the conversation, because this is what makes things live for people. And I think as well, sharing some of your own examples, especially as a team leader or manager or owner of difficult times you've had, that also helps build trust and a place of psychological safety. So somebody can go, do you know what, you're right. I mean, I've had that done to me in the past, and I have ended up going, I'm fine. And then my manager being so nice and understanding that I am that, 40-year-old woman he had crying in his office over a cup of tea at 11 o'clock in the morning unexpectedly. But you know what? It was a good thing because they just asked the question and I didn't expect my manager to notice. And that also sends out a very reassuring message about your own personal leadership, that you have taken the time to have the conversation.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Showing you care and caring about people. Thank you both, Mary and Siobhan, for such splendid presentations. We really enjoyed that. We were talking about this, and Sean, who's been doing all the technical wizardry, but when we were planning this, both Rachel Burns and Donna Convery said to me, and you'll know when the webinar is going well, when it's nearly over and you haven't looked at your watch. And that has flown today, and you've given us such insight. I, for one, I'm looking forward to seeing the replay and reading your thoughts. Thank you so much. It's about helping people who are incredibly busy. So we're going to roll a video now that summarizes what's coming up, and also the support, the support which is available to managers as part of the Let's Do Hospitality and Tourism program. So we're going to see that shortly, and then we'll tell you a little bit about what's happening next week. So we've had a great afternoon, and just a reminder that with the replay of this event, all the resources, Mary's ebook, Siobhan's slides and Mary's slides will be sent to you, and you'll have an opportunity to look at those again. So even if there are people on the call today who weren't able to stay for the full duration of it because of a very busy time, particularly with Friday's deadline looming, there will be an opportunity for you to see that. And then you can also, the great work being done right across the 6 colleges, but you'll be able to see these talks and others both on the Belfast Met YouTube channel and on the Belfast Met Support for Business, because that's what these webinars are all about, giving people an opportunity to ask questions. And we thank Siobhan and Mary so much for being so generous, not only with their time, but with their insights as well. And let's have a look at this video now and see what support is available. for people doing the work and leading businesses and managing staff and supporting all of them at this very, very challenging time.
The Hospitality and Tourism Recovery Programme has been designed by colleges in collaboration with industry representatives and is funded by the Department for the Economy. The programme provides a skills-led approach to supporting managers in the hospitality and tourism sector. Working together, we've developed this programme, which includes a short series of knowledge webinars for managers, a range of technical skills sessions to help support upskilling of staff in very bespoke areas, and a Level 3 Leadership and Management qualification that has been designed and contextualised for the hospitality and tourism sector based on the skills needs identified by those working within the sector. I'll take you through each element of the programme in a bit more detail. The Management Spotlight series is made up of 4 knowledge-based webinars aimed at leaders and managers across the hospitality and tourism sector. The first webinar was held on the 14th of April and centred around the importance of skills development, funding programmes and strategies in place or soon to be in place that will help the sector move through recovery. We heard from the Hospitality and Tourism Skills Network, Tourism NI and FE colleges on the different avenues of support available to businesses. The second webinar on the 21st of April discussed issues around the attraction and retention of staff within the hospitality and tourism sector. During the webinar, Nicola Daly provided discussion on different methods and tips on how to attract and retain staff. Heather Graham provided an insight into how Titanic Belfast encourage and engage their staff. And Carolyn McNeice discussed the benefits of engaging your local college as a way in which to pipeline potential staff. Both the first and second webinars are now available to view again. Links are on the screen now. This week, we looked at resilience, where Siobhan Mulvenna and Mary McGrath have provided a lot of tips on building resilience in both yourself and your team. This was a common skills request to support managers in the industry. I hope you found today beneficial with some techniques you can take away and put into practice. The final management webinar next week is centred around the changing needs of customer service. So much has changed in a year, and some of it will never return to normal. Services have adapted to accommodate lockdowns, and managers, when they return, will need to find that balance and engage with their customers to work out what this new normal is and what service the customer still wants. There may also be many changes and expectations remaining around cleanliness and social distancing. This session will take a closer look at those changing expectations and how you, as a manager, can identify these and respond to them. If you haven't already, visit the programme website at the bottom of the screen to sign up and register for this webinar. Through the programme, we also have a Level 3 Leadership and Management qualification that is being delivered by each of the 6 FE colleges. These qualifications have been designed to support managers in hospitality and tourism. The qualification includes areas such as understanding leadership, looking at emotional intelligence and its link to becoming an effective leader. There's motivation and performance management, as well as looking at communication as an essential component to becoming a leader. All of this will be put into the context of not just the hospitality and tourism sector, but adjusted to ensure relevance to the individuals on the course and their work setting. The Level 3 qualification supports practicing team leaders and managers who need to lead people through organisational change. The courses will be delivered online by each of the colleges across May and June. Each has different days of delivery to allow you to select the one that works best for your work schedule. To achieve the qualification, there will be a short assessment required at the end. Eligibility to secure a place on the course is based on skills-focused funding criteria. That is, that the company you work for must have under 250 employees and within relevant state aid limits. Charities and community groups are not eligible. Details of the 6 courses and their college representatives are on screen now. If you have any queries regarding the programme or funding criteria, they'll be able to provide you with more information. Finally, the third element of the programme is for those working in hospitality and tourism who have very bespoke skills in specialist areas. We have 7 technical skills sessions available for you. These range from new IT technologies for tourism businesses, preparing cuts of meat such as lamb or poultry, to developing skills in baking, chocolate creating, and the art of a good cocktail making. Spaces are fully funded with no eligibility criteria other than that you work within the hospitality and tourism industry. However, spaces are limited, so don't hesitate to get in contact. All sessions are delivered online and some may require ingredients and preparation prior to sessions commencing. If you or a member of your team are interested in finding out any more about any element of this new support programme, visit the programme website. Details are on screen now.
Well, thank you very much indeed. That was a great kind of summary of all of the support which is available to businesses. And I certainly know I could feel ears pricking up when the art of making a perfect cocktail was mentioned. That was certainly something as the sun comes out, which will be very enjoyable in fabulous venues across Northern Ireland. We look forward to that. So just a reminder that everything will be emailed to you from today with the slides, the ebook, and you'll have a chance to see the video. We thank very much indeed Mary McGrath and Siobhan Mulvenna for sharing their thoughts. It was absolutely thrilling to hear your thoughts, ladies, today. We're very, very grateful to you. And just a reminder that the great work being done in the 6 colleges right across Northern Ireland will be reflected on and signposted to in the final of our 4 webinars, which will take place next Wednesday, the 5th of May at 3 p.m. with Marianne Hood of Marianne Hood Hospitality Solutions, who will shine a light on changing customer service needs, absolutely essential at this critical time. Thank you so much for stopping by, and we wish you every success from Friday onwards and upwards. Thank you.
Thank you.